A letter under your door. Not a bill, not a flyer, not another pizza menu. A real letter. Folded once, no envelope, no name. And the first line says, "Your baby cries all night. Please do something." Your heart drops. Your face goes hot. Your brain starts spinning through every worst-case scenario at once. They're going to call the manager. They're going to complain to the city. They're going to hate us forever. We're the worst neighbors in this building, the family everyone talks about. I know, I've been exactly there. Standing in my pajamas at 8 in the morning, holding that letter, feeling my whole day collapse before it even started. And here's the thing I learned the hard way. In that exact second, you have a choice. You can get defensive. You can get angry. You can cry. You can fire back. You can hide. You can do 100 things that feel right in the moment and make everything 10 times worse. Or you can handle it like a pro. Now, before you roll your eyes, I'm not talking about some perfect parent who has it all together. I'm talking about the way I handled it after making every mistake in the book first. The hard way, so you don't have to. Here's the first thing nobody tells you. That letter feels like an attack, but most of the time, it's not. It's a neighbor who's tired, who didn't know how to talk to you, who chose a piece of paper over a face-to-face conversation because face-to-face is scary and paper is safe. And how you react in the next 10 minutes, that decides whether this becomes a war or a friendship. It decides whether you spend the next 3 years avoiding each other in the hallway, or whether you end up swapping phone numbers and watching each other's mail. So let's talk about what to do and what not to do. Because there's a right way and a very wrong way to handle this. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll never look at that letter the same way again. First, the things that feel right but are actually traps. And trust me, I've fallen into every single one. So you don't have to. Don't write an angry letter back. I know how good it feels in the moment. You're exhausted, you're defensive. Your baby is crying in the other room, and you haven't slept in 6 weeks, and now someone has the nerve to complain? You want to fire back. Something sharp. Something that puts them in their place. But here's what nobody tells you. An angry letter back is how you turn a tired neighbor into a lifelong enemy. It escalates every time. And once you send it, you can't unsend it. That letter lives forever. It gets kept. It gets shown to the property manager. It gets brought up at the worst possible moment, 3 years from now, when you're trying to resolve something completely unrelated. I almost did it. I wrote the letter. I even signed it. And then I sat there, reading it, and something stopped me. Maybe it was the thought of my daughter reading it someday. Maybe it was the memory of my own grandfather, who was a landlord for 40 years and always said the same thing. You can win an argument and lose a neighbor in the same sentence. I crumpled it up, and thank goodness I did, because that piece of paper would have followed me forever. Don't hide from them forever. This is the trap I actually fell into, the deep one. After that letter showed up, I started taking the stairs instead of the elevator. I avoided the hallway at certain hours. I stopped going to the laundry room. I ordered groceries online so I wouldn't have to walk past the front desk. I was shrinking my whole life to fit inside 4 walls, all because one neighbor wrote one letter. And guess what? The neighbor doesn't disappear. The tension just gets bigger and weirder. And now you're not just the family with a crying baby. You're the family with a crying baby who's also acting weird. Hiding doesn't make the problem smaller. It makes you smaller, and the problem stays exactly the same size. Don't pretend it didn't happen. This one feels like the mature choice. You read the letter. You nod. You throw it away. You move on with your life. But here's the thing. If you ignore the letter, the neighbor feels unheard. and an unheard neighbor doesn't go away. They write another letter, or they call the manager, or they leave a passive-aggressive note on the elevator door that everyone reads, or they just glare at you in the hallway for the next 3 years, and you both pretend you don't see each other, and the whole building can feel the weirdness. Ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. It just makes it worse. And it makes you look like the difficult one, even when you're not. Don't take it personally. This is the big one. The one that changes everything. The letter isn't about you being a bad parent. It's not about your baby being a problem. It's about a neighbor who can't sleep. That's it. That's the whole letter. A tired person wrote a tired note. They weren't attacking your parenting. They weren't saying your baby is a monster. They were saying, I'm exhausted, and I don't know how to say that to your face. Once you see that, the letter stops being an attack and starts being a conversation. And a conversation you can handle? Now here's the interesting part, because what you do next is the difference between a war and a friendship. And there's one move that changes everything. One move that turned my worst neighbor situation into my best friendship in the building. And it's not what you think. So what do you actually do? Let me walk you through it. Because I've been there, and I've found a way that works. Step 1, breathe. Then read it again. The first read is pure emotion. Your heart is pounding. Your face is hot. You're not reading the letter, you're reacting to it. The second read is information, so read it twice before you do anything. That 10-second pause saves you from 100 bad decisions. It's the difference between reacting and responding. And it's free. You can do it in your pajamas. Nobody even has to know. The first time I read that letter, I saw an attack. The second time I read it, I saw a person who wrote, "Please do something," like it was the last thing they had left. And that changed everything for me. Step 2, understand their side. They're not evil, they're tired, same as you. You're both losing sleep over the same baby. You're on the same team. You just don't know it yet. Think about it. They're not lying awake because they hate you. They're lying awake because the crying is loud, and they have to work in the morning, and they don't know what else to do. And here's the thing that changed my whole perspective. That neighbor isn't trying to hurt you. They're trying to get through the night. Same as you. Same as every parent who's ever paced a nursery at 2 a.m. with a screaming baby. You're not enemies. You're two tired people on opposite sides of a thin wall. Step 3, open the door. And here's the move that changed everything for me. Instead of hiding, instead of fighting, instead of pretending, I put a sign on my door. I know, it sounds crazy. Let me show you what it said. New baby in 2B, first-time parents. We're learning on the job. If you have a tip, slide it under the door. We'll take all the help we can get. And if we're loud at night, please be patient. We promise we're trying. My husband thought I'd lost my mind. He stood in the hallway, reading it, and said, "You know this is insane, right?" I said, "They already think we're the crazy family with the crying baby. Might as well lean into it." That sign did something amazing. It turned the whole building into my support team. Instead of complaints, I got tips. A drawing of a swaddle with arrows and labels. A calming tea recipe from the old lady in 1A, with a note that said, "For you, not the baby. Trust me." A note from 3A about a car ride and whiskey, which I chose to ignore. And here's the surprise. The neighbor who wrote the letter, he saw the sign, and he couldn't stay mad after that, because the sign said the thing he was too scared to say. "We're trying. Please be patient." It was like I'd opened the door and said, "I know I'm loud. I'm working on it. Help me." And that's all anyone actually wants. To feel like they're not fighting alone. Step 4, go talk to them. With cookies, The best thing I ever did was knock on that neighbor's door with a plate of cookies. Not to argue, not to explain. Just to say, I'm the loud one. I'm sorry. We're trying. You know what happened? He opened the door. He looked at the cookies, and he laughed. Then he told me those were the same cookies everyone in the building gets from Mrs. Kowalski in 1A, and it was basically a rite of passage. We talked for 10 minutes. Turns out he was a nurse who worked nights. He couldn't sleep either. He wasn't mad at my baby. He was mad at his own schedule, and my baby's crying was just the thing that broke him. And then he said the thing I never saw coming. Can I hold her for an hour? You go sleep. I'm a nurse. I've held 100 babies. That hour turned into every Friday night. He became our Friday night babysitter, and he became our friend. All because I knocked on a door with cookies instead of hiding from a letter. But before you do any of that, there's one thing you need to check first. And this is the part most people forget. The part that can save you from a whole different kind of trouble. Before you put up a sign, before you knock on the door, before you do anything, check your building's rules. I know. It's not the exciting part, but it's the part that keeps you out of trouble. Every condo and apartment building has its own set of rules. Some have quiet hours, some have rules about what you can put on your door. Some have a property manager you're supposed to go through first. And some cities have noise ordinances you need to know about. Here's the thing, you don't want to solve one problem and create another. So take 5 minutes, read the building's rules. Check if there's a noise policy. See if there's a standard way complaints are supposed to be handled. And if you're not sure, ask the property manager. It's better to know the rules before you act, not after. And one more thing, if the situation ever gets really tense, if the neighbor is threatening you, or harassing you, or crossing a real line, that's when you stop handling it yourself and let the property manager step in. That's what they're there for. You don't have to fight every battle alone. And you shouldn't. There's a difference between being a good neighbor and being a doormat. Knowing the rules helps you see that difference. So if you get that letter, don't panic, don't fight, don't hide, don't ignore it. Take a breath. Read it twice. Understand they're tired. Check the rules, and then open the door. Because most neighbors aren't looking for a war. They're looking for a way through the night. Same as you. And sometimes, all it takes is a sign on a door, or a plate of cookies, or one honest conversation. The letter that felt like an attack. It can be the start of your best friendship in the building. You just have to be brave enough to open the door first. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever gotten a letter like this? What did you do? And what do you wish you'd done differently? Drop your story in the comments. And if you're the one who can't sleep because of a neighbor's baby, that's the next story. I'll see you there.